everyone, welcome to Brave Souls. My guest tonight is Rachel Tilley. She is an adoptee and I can't wait for her to come on and share her story with all of you. So as soon as Rachel comes on, she can request to join in and we will get started shortly. I will just sit here and wait for people to come on. Hi, welcome. Esmuda, I don't know your name, but welcome. Hi, Glenn Fran, hello. Thank you for joining. Bitcha J, hello, welcome. I'm sorry, I don't know any of your names, so please let me know your names so I can say them right. Hi, Lisa. I'm good, how are you? Okay, Rachel just came on. Luda, okay, thank you. Very nice to meet you, Luda. Andrew, okay. Hi, Andrew, thank you. Okay, Rachel, I see you on. Just request to join and we'll get started shortly. If you're having trouble joining, let me know. Oh, you're so welcome, Andrew. Okay, I'm gonna pull Rachel in. Oh, I thought I did. Hold on. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, Mary. Welcome. Hi, Dixon. Dixon, hello. Welcome. Sarah, your sister's here.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm sorry, I'm saying names so horribly tonight, but I'm glad everyone's telling me their name now.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, Elena. Hello. Hey, Chris. Welcome. Hey, Jim. So usually I just wait for people to come on, until a few people to come on until we start.
Yeah, of course.
So how was your day?
It was good. It was good. It was, I feel like it was kind of hectic because I had work and everything and I just was trying to like wrap up and I showered. I feel like my hair is like all over the place.
Oh, it's funny. Normally I am so, I usually am a little more glamored up. I was like, I just don't even feel like doing it tonight. So I'm very casual. My hair's not washed, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
Hi, Leah.
Welcome. Oh, hi, Leah. I love you. That's my sister.
Oh, welcome. That's sweet. Okay, I'll give it just another 10 seconds or so.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to throw my hair up too because
Okay.
I feel like this is that sort of conversation.
It's going to get serious, I could tell.
About to get serious here.
Oh, thank you, Jim. You ladies are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Sweet. Do you know Jim?
I do. I've connected with him through your show, your lives, and then just obviously he's so
good.
Adoptee community. He's so nice.
He is very nice. We have really wonderful people in our community.
So
welcoming, so loving, very supportive. So
we're very lucky.
Yeah, including you and Sarah, of course.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. So yeah, for anybody who joins late or isn't able to join on tonight, it'll be saved to my page right after, so they can go back and watch it at any time, and you'll be tagged, of course. Answer Luda's question, what is the point of this live video? So this is really, I do most of my lives are for adoption, to bring awareness, to shed light that adoption isn't always beautiful, that there's a lot of trauma behind it, and every adoptee is a person I can't talk, okay. An adoptee is a person who is adopted. They come on and just use their voice, just share their story of whether it's a happy reunion, a sad ending, however it is, how it affected them growing up, how it still affects them, and what they're doing through their healing journey as they come out of the adoptee fog. But if you have any more questions, Lude, I'd love to answer them. If you want to send me a message, we'll talk about it more. But I want to hear from the lovely Rachel. Thank you again for joining me tonight. And I'm going to let you take it away and start. Oh, I understand I'm on that boat. I got adopted at 15. Well, I would love to hear more of your stories, so please message me and we'll talk after. Rachel, so take it away, girl. Start from the beginning and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I absolutely love watching your lives. So I'm pumped to be here.
I love to hear that. Good.
Yes. So, okay. Where to start? My name's Rachel. I should probably start with that. And I am adopted. I was adopted from Peru, from Cusco, Peru. Shout out to my Peruvians on here. I know there are a few of you. So yeah, I was adopted from Peru and I was 12 days old when I was adopted, and I was adopted by my parents. My parents are from the United States, so I'm an inter-country or international adoptee.
Okay.
And yeah, my parents are from Massachusetts, so that's where they wanted to raise their family. And that's where they raised me and my 3 other sisters. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. So growing up in a house with 4 girls was, that you could write a book on that.
Oh, sure.
All on your own. And yeah, I was, like I said, I was the oldest. So there's Sarah, who is right after me, and she was on You're Alive last week. She's also an adoptee, also from Peru. Mm-hmm. And then my parents' biological daughter comes after Sarah, and then our youngest sister, who's also here on this, her name's Leah, and she was adopted from China. So there's 3 adoptees, 3 TRAs, transracial adoptees, mm-hmm. And it was like really nice. I think we definitely had our differences growing up. Sarah and I particularly had our differences. But for the most part, we're all really close right now, and which is like a season I'm fully enjoying and embracing. And yeah. But yeah, other than that, growing up in a small town in Massachusetts was definitely weird. Mm-hmm. It was predominantly white. It's like it hovers in like the 94-95% white. So
right. So you knew all along growing up that you were adopted.
Yeah, it's so interesting. That's like always the first question whenever people find out you're adopted. They're like, oh, when did you know, or when did you find out, or did you always know? And I definitely always knew, but I don't think I fully understood the concept of adoption.
Of course, yeah.
Until I was older, but
that makes sense.
Yeah, I have memories of being very, very, very young. I don't know how old I was, of looking in the mirror and being a little startled. Who is that? I don't I look like anyone who I see every day.
No, I did the same thing growing up. Except my family is also white, so there wasn't much of a difference. I'm also an international. I can't talk tonight. I'm sorry. International adoptee as well, but I'm from Romania, and I used to do the same thing. Stare in the mirror, wonder, why don't I look like them? And there wasn't much of a difference between us, so it wasn't like someone could see it and be like, oh, she's not their child.
Right.
But just for some reason, I didn't think, appearance wise, I looked like them. Yeah. But I didn't grasp it, of course, so young. So
yeah, no, I definitely it shook me when I was really, really little. I was like, oh, something weird, something's off. And then it wasn't until I started going to school, and that was when kindergarten and elementary school, that was when other students would point it out, whether it was through bullying or just you look different. And then there was a couple other adoptees in our hometown, which is kind of interesting, a couple other TRAs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always kind of joked, like, my sisters and I, like, the only diversity in Marshfield was Marshfield, my hometown, was basically like us in our house. But there were a few other uh, adoptees in our town. But what was interesting is, like, I would get confused, like, teachers would confuse me and other adoptees, even though we don't really look anything alike, but
Yeah.
we're the only two brown children in the school. So that definitely brought, like, different layers to the whole thing. And, once you go out of the house, once you are not really protected by your parents anymore, like, that's when the stark differences really, really happen. And
Sure.
it's
Absolutely.
kind of call itself out to you.
Yeah.
Um,
So I asked Sarah last week, of course she told most of the story, but everyone, even though you were in the same household, you still have a different view, different situation on your end. So growing up with your sisters and all the ones girls who were adopted, and your one sister who is biologically your parents, what was it like for you? Your relationships with them?
yeah, so my youngest sister, she's actually 12 years younger than me. So growing up with her, it was very much like I felt like her second mom. Like,
Mm.
I still view her as like my child. Like, she can do no wrong in my book. So it's not really like I think my other sisters definitely see her more as like a peer, whereas I'm just like, it's Leah, it's my Leah. Um, and with Bethany, like, Bethany and I and Leah and I, we got along really well, and we grew up close, definitely. And then with Sarah, it was like a whole other thing. Like, it was
Yeah.
we just butted heads growing up completely. Like, I mean,
Why do you think?
so we have a lot of theories now. It's interesting because, like, now when people see us, like, we're in a lot of adoptee spaces together. We go to, like, adoptee support groups, or we have, like, adoptee Instagram accounts that we share together, and we just do a lot of work together now. We're very close. And so people are really surprised when they hear that, because growing up, we definitely, like, hated each other, And I think a lot of it, you really could say, stem from our adoptions. And if you had asked us that question, like, a couple years ago, I would have said, like, she's just awful. Like, she's just terrible. Like, she's just
Oh,
a person. Like, that's why. But I think the more, just processing of our adoptions we've done, the more healing we've done on our own, like, really kind of getting to the whys, like, why did we butt heads? Why did we argue so much? What was the issue? And it really, a lot of it came down to, she just, like, growing up, I think she was just very, like, out there and very loud and very positive. Like, she just wanted to talk about Peru. She wanted to talk about, going back to meet her birth mother. And I was the complete opposite. I just, like, wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to talk about being from Peru. I didn't want to talk about my birth mother. A lot of that, I think, was, and I know now, was like
and that's normal to feel that way. I mean,
it's
every
yeah.
adoptee is different when it
Well,
comes.
like, I think it's normal to an extent. Like, I think it's normal if you're okay. Like, if you're okay, if you've, like, made peace with it, and that's, like, the choice that you've made for yourself, I think that's perfectly normal and fine. I think for me, though, there was a lot of hurt behind it. Like, I was very, growing up, just felt very, like, abandoned and discarded by my birth mother, by Peru in general. Like, I just kind of felt like, well, they just must, Peru didn't want me. Like, she didn't want me. I'm so much better off without her. I don't need her. Um, it was definitely, like, a defense mechanism. And I think the other sort of hard layer to that was, like, I hadn't humanized her at all. And that was something that I really struggled with growing up. Like, that no one ever really, like, told me about her in a way that was like, she's a human, like, she's a woman. She, like, this was a sad thing. Like, she probably was devastated to give you up. Like, it was never explained to me in that way. It was always explained to me in, like, she wanted a better life for you. this was a choice that she made.
I
And
had the same response. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that obviously like adoptive parents, when they say that, they're trying to like comfort and
Of
make their child.
course. They want to protect you. They don't want, to.
Right, right. And a lot of times I think they don't even have answers themselves. So they have to just kind of come up with something that will help resolve the situation. But for me, that like really messed with my head. I think it really made me feel like, okay, like I equated love with abandonment, and I equated
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, then that means everyone who loves me is going to abandon me. Or that means like I'm not worthy of being loved.
Wow, you're hitting so close to home for me. A lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's
But
really,
that's what I mean too. Like, we were talking about like what's normal between, it is still normal in a way. Like, even though it's kind of unhealthy. But, for me, like, I'm saying that because I'm also been in your situation. It was normal for me because, yes, I was still living in denial. I was ashamed of it. I just felt so many emotions towards my birth mother, Romania, everything, that I just wasn't ready to process it. It was already painful, and I
yeah,
just wasn't ready to process, but I'm processing it now.
yeah,
And that's okay that you're not ready when you were younger. So
right.
that's what I meant by normal. Like, it's okay to not want to confront those demons at such a young age, because I feel like when we're older, we can do it better. We have more support.
Yes. And yeah, I know, I appreciate you saying that because I totally agree. And I do think more, I would have benefited knowing that other adoptees felt like that growing up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it would have meant a lot to me. Like, I wouldn't have felt so bad about myself. I think
Yeah.
that's like a huge part of it when you're, like, when you're feeling so low, but then everyone around you who hears your story, and they don't, that's the thing, they don't hear your story, they just hear that you're adopted, that's it.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when everyone around you is saying like oh my gosh, that's so wonderful, or like that's so, like your parents are so special, or how beautiful, it made me feel like, okay, something's wrong with me then, because if everyone's telling me that this is a beautiful, wonderful thing, but I feel so crappy, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I enjoy and appreciate and be grateful for all the things that I have? Because that's what everyone's telling me.
And they're diminishing our feelings.
Diminishing our feelings 100%,
Yeah.
but also just not even like giving us space to have those like
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable and like just like I didn't even want to say it out loud. Like, I didn't want people to know that I felt that way.
Yeah.
I told so few people that growing up. Like, the only person I really told that to was my best friend, and she's been my best friend since I was 2. And then my husband, who I actually met in high school. It was really those two, like, caring, like, they really knew the whole, how I really felt. Like, everyone else, I think, thought I felt great, and everything was wonderful, and everything was peachy
And
keen.
that's so sad that, we have to be silenced like that. And it's not maliciously, it's just people, they're just not, they don't understand. That, like I said, they associate adoption with, oh my gosh, this is amazing. You
Right.
should be so grateful. You should be, so, this is amazing for you. This is beautiful. And then they just don't realize how much hurt there is behind that. That at that point, then you're kind of afraid to say how you feel, because
Totally.
they just like it's just they just don't understand. And that's, like I said, this is the whole point of the lives. What I'm trying to do is, which a lot of other adoptees in our community are doing the same thing. They're voicing their feelings, how they felt growing up. They're voicing about adoption, and this is where it needs to keep going.
Totally.
The
Totally.
people, especially outside of the adoption community, to understand, like, be a little more, open-minded when it comes to adoption. Understand it more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. It's like, whenever I started talking about adoption, there were a lot of reactions from close family and friends, and
Mm-hmm.
people just don't know what to do with it. They're like, "Oh, this doesn't sound good." And I got a lot of like, well, that's how everything is. Like, everything, who knows, like, where I could have been, what I could have been, what could have happened, this and that. Like, you can't let yourself spiral down those dark holes. Like, that's just unhealthy. And I don't think people people fully understand, like when you're an adoptee, it's a whole other thing. Like it's not just this like typical existential crisis, like when you're growing up, like who am I? What am I doing? It's so
Right.
more than that. Like there were moments, and yeah, like so I feel like I should kind of talk about just how I got to where I am, because
But to ricochet off what you just said, it is, you know, like people say, I'm gonna go find myself. With adoptees, it really is about finding ourselves.
yeah,
And it's
it,
not that
and
cliche response. It like,
totally,
yeah,
and it's also like I personally feel like I was erased. Like I just feel like so many of us feel that way. Like
of course.
who, when you take somebody and you put a new name on them and a new person,
Identity.
a whole identity, it causes this like crazy identity crisis. And just like when you erase somebody in that way, especially when it comes to, you know, Black, brown, indigenous adoptees, it is so damaging and so harmful to our identities. And it makes us so uncomfortable in almost every situation. Like that's the word I use for whenever people ask what it was like growing up adopted. Like it was uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable. I never felt like I never felt like I belonged anywhere. I never felt like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. It just always felt like I was on shaky ground. It always felt like like at any given moment this could all just poof and nothing is real. Like
Right.
it was very hard for sure.
Yeah. There are just a couple comments I want to just like yeah, so Jim said, man, this is nothing but truth. He said that was my childhood. Preach, Sarah. The Princess Warrior, that's heartbreaking that you couldn't voice that, and it's sad that a lot of us can't growing up. I mean, we can, but we can't at the same time. Like, it's not like we're told not to, it's just we're not provided that space to do so, and that's the difference.
Right, but yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I really do. I feel for some adopted parents, especially the ones that are, you know, have children who were adopted in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, because there's just so much that now that I think they wish they could have done differently. And I just don't think, like, you know, I get that question a lot, like, what should I have done? Or like from an adoptive parent, what can I do to prevent this? You can't. Like, my adoptive parents, they were, you know, we didn't talk about certain things. We didn't talk about race, which I think was really, really hard. But we did, you know, they did create room for us to talk about our adoptions if we wanted to, but I just didn't want to. And I think that it's like a balancing act of really trying to figure out how can you support this child who is experiencing adoption trauma, and like really understand that and learn about it as much as you can so that you can be there for your child when they are struggling. Because I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was going through. I don't think my parents knew. I don't think I don't think there's anything that could have been done to make it not happen. I just think that there's just so much that a lot of people don't know. There's so much, even for me as an adoptee, that I'm still learning. That's like,
Totally, same.
you know, you learn about these terms, you learn about even like how adoption trauma impacts us, even if we're adopted as infants. Like, it's really interesting, and it's definitely a tricky part of it, because as you're processing your own feelings about everything, you're also learning all this stuff, and you're like, wait a second, like, that's me. Like, I go through that, I've experienced that, or I feel that, and you start tying all these things together.
And I feel like at 32 years later, I still have questions. I still am finding out new things, or I still am, you know, just, you know, I still have these thoughts. You know, they don't completely go away. It's just over time, you learn a little bit more, which helps it, or you learn to manage things, or manage what you're going through. But the feelings are always still going to be there. I still have that feeling of abandonment. Yet sometimes where I don't feel like I'm enough. You know, so like I said, over time it gets better or it gets easier, but they never go away.
Right. Yeah, I know. And that's the part too. Like, I think for me, well, just my personal sort of journey in the last year, I know you and I have talked, and I know others have talked. Like for me, coming out of the fog definitely happened this past year.
Yeah.
And but prior to that, I do feel like there were a few events in my life that it made me think about everything very differently. And I think it's those moments in our life that something happens to us, or somebody says something, or we experience another form of trauma, or we go through something else, and
Mm-hmm.
it starts kind of shaking things loose a little bit. And
Yeah.
for
And it
me,
resurfaces things too.
it resurfaces things, yeah.
Yeah.
And it all, for me, like a big part of it was humanizing Victoria, my birth mother. My birth mother's name
Mm.
is Victoria.
That's a big thing.
So humanizing her, I hadn't humanized her my whole life. Like I had just thought of her as this non thing.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, I even made her like a villain in my story, because I just had to understand, like, why would you abandon me? Why would you give me up? Like, you have to be this horrible person. That's just the story I told
Mm-hmm.
myself. Um,
And that's all validating thoughts. Absolutely.
right. Yeah. Um, and yeah, so it took a couple of different things that, like, different, whether it was like a movie or a story or an event that happened to me, that it just really shook that for me and really made me realize, like, oh no, she was like a person. Like she's a person with like a
Mm-hmm.
heart, with a soul. Like that's wild. I've never thought of that in that way. I've never thought of her in that way. And I think for the first time I started grieving her. Like I hadn't fully grieved her at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was a huge part of my coming out of the fog this past year. And it really was like, it was like earth shattering at the time. Like I didn't know what to do
Yeah.
with it. I was just like, what I couldn't even move. Like it was really brutal. Um,
No,
and
I absolutely feel the same. So about how you were like humanizing. So I started doing the same thing with my birth mother. I started giving her more empathy. And so the one thing, like, Sarah and I have in common, we're both the product of rape, unfortunately. And for the longest time, I just hated my birth mother. I still do for different reasons, but I just always, like you said, made her out to be a villain and all these horrible feelings against her until I was pretty much in the same situation as she was. And after that happened to me, I started showing her empathy. And I pictured myself in her situation, like, oh my gosh, like, not that I never looked at her. I never, like, I don't know where I was going with that. I thought in my head, but anyway, but yeah, I started doing that after almost the same thing happened to me, and then I started looking at her as more of a person, and
yeah,
not just a mother or a person who abandoned me. So I
right.
completely understand that,
Yeah, yeah,
and
no,
that's huge to show your birth mother empathy. As
that
hard
is,
as that is,
it really is. It's a big part of it. And I think
it
even
is.
no matter where you like end up with it, I think it's so healing for me now to
Yeah.
like think of it that way and
You
understand.
feel more at peace with
You
certain
feel
stuff.
more at peace. And I think also just like telling yourself over and over again, like those affirmations, that
Mm-hmm.
you are worthy. Like you are worthy of love. You are worthy of a mother. Like you're worthy of all these things. Like those are
And
things.
you are not your trauma.
Yeah, those are things I didn't tell myself growing up. I told myself the opposite. So I think now it's just making up for that lost time. But um, I think another big part. I mean, I feel like there's so many different layers to it, and that's what people kind of I still I think have a hard time understanding, at least in my life. Like there's that whole aspect of it is this like first family, first homeland, first culture, this like loss, this like deep sense of loss.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other aspect of it for me as a TRA, a transracial adoptee, so like my parents are white, a big part of coming out of the fog for me this past year was like a lot of the discussions around race.
Mm-hmm.
And my adopted family just like didn't didn't handle a lot of that so well. And I think for me it like I knew all these things. Like I knew that family members had certain prejudices and stereotypes and felt certain ways because of things they said my whole life growing up. but it wasn't until like this past year where I feel like a lot of this stuff came out, and it was like, it was confirming a lot of the fears that I had growing up.
Sure.
And that honestly, I think has been made, it's like race and this like loss of first family and first homeland that have been the two biggest things for me that I've
And
just,
that's a lot to juggle.
it's a lot. It's like,
Yeah,
it
because
is
they're big deals.
right, right, exactly. Um,
Let me I just want to read off a few people.
yeah.
I like to occasionally read out because I don't want to ignore anyone. Um, People have no clue how to react. Oh yeah, that's so true, Yao. Um, that's such an important point. That was a deeper, yeah. Remember my dad said, be like a Serrano, but I'm not a Serrano. It's true.
So true.
You don't feel free enough to do so. I guess that's to talk about how you feel. Being in the family, I was struggled. I never knew how to behave. I'm sorry to hear that. More education is needed for adoption trauma. Absolutely. It never goes away. That's true. My anger will always be there. I'm fooling myself if I think it will go away. Just less of it. And that's how, going back to the feelings are always going to be there. We're learning to manage them better. Having empathy for my birth mother, that helped big time, Bethany said. Leah said, I don't know my birth mother, and sometimes I wish I knew what she was like to help me figure out who I am and what I am. Leah, have you gone searching for your birth mother? And feel free to message me and not put that on here if you don't want. This is just my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before adopting, it's important to educate yourself. No, you're absolutely right. This is the whole point of these lives, and what we do in this community is to educate people, not just for adoptees, but for adoptive parents and people outside the community, to know from the very beginning, like, it's not just, like, I say this a lot, but it's not just bringing a child home and that's it, they're ours. It's not just telling their child they're adopted and then our job is done. Right. Your job is started. Also, it is important after adopting to start family therapy, because if you really want this child to be connected and not feeling different, as parents, you're responsible to make sure this child needs are met and welcome. Know that adopting a teenager, they already have a baggage on their shoulders. With some children, you will have to take smaller steps and introduce them to the family. Some children will adapt faster than others. I believe it depends on their lives before. So absolutely true. Right on. Absolutely, Luda. And that's another thing I did mention before, is that I do feel like as soon as you tell your child they're adopted, you should put them in therapy. And if they find, there's adoptees I met that are fine, that are like never really affected them, like they're okay, that's okay. Then they don't need to continue therapy. But I feel like therapy is so important, because it'll just prevent a lot of just not living in silence about it.
Yeah.
So
important.
Yeah, all good points. Thank you all for participating and talking with us. I love comments. But please continue, Rachel, about what we were talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like love all those comments as well. I'm glad so many people brought those things up, because I think they're really important. I think, mental health is so important. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I think, for me, mental health was like not a discussion growing up at all, which is so wild. Luckily, like I said, my sister's 12 years younger than me. She's so much more like well versed in things than I am, and I think it is improving. Like the education and awareness is definitely, which is so huge. And I think it's why, like, some of us, like, I'm 32 and I just came out of the fog, but I've talked to some adoptees who are like much younger, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you're so
because we're helping younger generations as well, and by putting this stuff out there and letting you know, like, it's okay to talk about your feelings. It's normal to feel this way. You're not alone. Like, by reminding the younger generation over and over again, that helps so big in growing up. So
and I think for me too, I don't know. I don't know if other adoptees feel this way, or if it was just me or just my situation, but I do feel like a lot of my experience was like, you just aren't, like, I just felt like I wasn't supposed to talk about it. Like I felt like if I was feeling bad, I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I wasn't supposed to share it with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now I know, and I've heard from so many people, like people know to speak up when they're hurting or when they're not feeling good. And
Mm-hmm.
I really hope that, people just don't feel alone in those situations. That's been the biggest thing for me, having my sister, Sarah, who has also sort of gone through this coming out of the fog moment at the same time with me, which has just been huge. Because there were just moments I would call her and I would be like, I can't even like move. Like, I don't even know what to do. And so to have somebody else who you can like, who gets it, who you don't have to like sit there and explain
Mm-hmm.
all the different things that you're feeling, why you're feeling that way. I think a lot of people, when they're trying to make you feel better, they try to remind you of the things that you should be grateful for in your life. And
Right.
that can be really hard for adoptees because we've heard that so much our whole lives. Like, you have this and this, you should be grateful for this and this. And that's part of the trauma of it. So for that to be brought up when we're going through hard times and when we're struggling is like almost double the whammy of like slap in the face. Just like, that's not what I need to hear right now. Like, I can't hear that right now because hearing that right now makes me feel worse.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's been this past year. This past year has really honestly been like brutal. Like, I feel like I'm finally getting to a much healthier place. I did start to go
The
to,
healing journey is not easy.
it's not easy. It's
really
not,
not.
like, it's exhausting. It
It
really is
is. It's a
exhausting.
lot of energy. Takes out a lot of energy.
It really does. And I also feel like I need to just like call to attention because I don't think a lot of people, at least people in my circle, like whether it's colleagues, coworkers, family members who are white, I don't think they fully understand the additional layer of racial trauma that so many of us are experiencing with everything going on in the world and with everything that's been going on for generations. Like, that additional racial trauma on top of adoption trauma for TRAs is really tough. It's suffocating. It really is. It's really awful. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. And it's tricky because I have a core group of people that are not white and they're either brown, black, Asian, who I lean on in those moments when there's something in the news or there's another horrible thing. And so it's nice to have that community, but they're not adoptees, so they don't fully understand the additional layer.
Right. They get the one side of it, but
They go
not.
side of it, and then on the other side, I have a lot of adoptees who I talk to, and it's usually like the TRAs who like fully get that additional, like, this is so hard when it comes to like the Asian hate crimes that spiked in our country, or just the Black and brown communities, like just really struggling right now.
It needs to stop. It's what
it really needs to stop. And I really need, like, if you're gonna adopt, like, if I'm gonna be your family member, if you're gonna sit here and call me a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a niece, whatever, a granddaughter, whatever it is, like, you have to see me and respect me and
right.
understand
As
that
not only my family member, but someone of a different, another race or nationality. Right. So yeah.
And I think that is a huge part of adoption too, is that erasure that happens. I mean, so many times growing up, and still to this day, I hear a lot of family members and family friends saying like, "Oh, I just thought of you as white," or "I just think of you as white," or "Do you really go through these things because your parents are white?" And it's like, I don't think you, like, it's so infuriating. Like, I don't even have an expression for it other than like to flip them off with the middle finger. But like, it's just so frustrating.
They have blinders on, and they're just.
Yeah, but they do fully have blinders on. But I also think it's a big part of adoption, and it's a big part of like why I have such issues with transracial adoption, because when you raise a child white, when you don't talk about race in your family or with extended family, it causes a lot of issues for the child, but also just for like anyone who's in that child's life, and anyone that child then grows up to become a whole person, and then they go out into the real world. Like, we're not treated like white people just because you raised us as white people or love us like you would white people or whatever. It's
No, you're
not
completely
who we are. It's not who we are, and you're not honoring us. You're not seeing us. And I really try to make those distinctions. Like, I think I hear so much like, and this is, again, this happens so much. This happens so much for me. The gaslighting, the racial gaslighting that comes into play, especially with adoption, like, oh, they love you, or he doesn't mean that, or she's not, educated on these things, or like, you need to have patience, you need to have respect, you need to be like respectful of where everyone is at in their anti-racism journey. And it's like, no, if I'm in this family, if I'm like a respected and honored member of this family, there's no time for you to go buy the book or go listen to the
and
podcast.
respect goes both ways
It
too.
goes both ways. And that sort of like tone policing and gaslighting that happens, it is so damaging. It is so damaging to our psyches and our mental health. Like, it just causes us to, I honestly, like, there was a point last year where I felt like the best way I could describe it was just like a deep sense of paranoia and a deep sense of like, I don't even know what's real, or like, if like, when someone is telling you over and over and over again, you're making a big deal out of this, all you talk about is race, or they don't really mean those things, it really messes with your head. It really damages you, and it makes you second guess everything. It makes you question everything. It makes you like, it made me super paranoid, like super paranoid. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anybody. Um,
To live in fear like that is just, it's so unnecessary.
yeah, it's really awful. It's a really awful part of it. And I think for me, um, the biggest thing is really obviously therapy. I hate to say it because I know therapy is just not that accessible to everyone, and that's really a shitty part of everything. But um, for me, I started EDMR therapy. I don't know if you've heard of EDMR therapy, but I've heard from a lot of adoptees about it who've had experiences with it, positive experiences with it. I myself have absolutely, it's changed the game for me. And it's
You
just
mean, is it EMDR?
EMDR or EMDR.
EMDR, yeah, I've had that before, and it is absolutely helpful
Yeah, it's so
for
helpful.
sure.
It's so helpful. And I've just really, and the other big thing for me was, because I've gone to therapy since I was in college, but I've always had white therapists. And whenever I had a white therapist and I brought up adoption or race, they just didn't handle it well. Like, they didn't know what racial trauma was. They didn't know like, they would just say things that were just very invalidating and not
Yeah,
really appropriate for therapy. But so yeah, my therapist, I finally for the first time got a therapist who's not white, who understands racial trauma, and it also
good.
this like additional EMDR therapy, which has just been really huge, a huge part of it for me, and really just like learning how to take care of myself, like
Yes.
self-care, like
Hmm.
understanding that like I have to just figure out how to get up every day. Like, that's a big part of it. It's just how you survive. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think a big part too has just been connecting with other adoptees and really talking to other adoptees and listening to other adoptees.
Community is everything.
Community is a huge part of it,
It
and hearing
really is.
our differences, hearing where we have similarities, but also where we have differences, and maybe
Hmm.
even where we disagree. It's huge. It's been huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me just go back a little bit. Most adopted children have some type of trauma. It is important to ask yourself if you're willing to heal together and carry that child through. Absolutely. It sounds like a huge part of trying to help adoptees is consistently providing space to listen, her to invite you to talk about things as and when the adoptee needs to. Yeah, I'm finally free after telling my story, and that is the biggest part. Telling your story over and over again. I don't care if you say it till you're blue in the face. Continue to share your story, because I I always say there's always one person out there that needs to hear your story, and
Fully.
it inspires them to share themselves, and like you said, to feel like not alone.
Fully.
Give yourself time. I believe with the right support you can heal. It took me 26 years to come out with my story. I'm still struggling, but I'm much stronger. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you for that. It takes a lot of bravery and courage to share your story and continually talk about it and do the healing. So I'm proud of everyone who has done that for themselves.
Me too.
Just love that all you young adoptees have all this support. I'm 59 and see my past, and all you young adoptees. Well, Jim, you were part of this community, so you were supported just as much. We were told that our grandpa was so good to accept us into the family without questions, except.
Ugh. Ugh. Gross.
I'm sorry.
I had similar experience. Yeah.
Choosing adoption means choosing to love, protect, and advocate for a child for the long haul. That child becomes your child for better or worse. Are you willing to parent a child who doesn't trust you or attach to you and who might never do so? I mean, I started EMDR a couple months ago, and I can honestly say changed my life. Again, I am so proud of you, Luda. So we don't have much time, and I literally can talk to you forever on here, but Instagram won't let me do that. But I do want to talk about one more thing. If you don't want to talk about it, you could just say no and we can pass that. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. At any point of your life, have you tried to go search for your birth mother?
No, not yet. And I'm okay
Okay.
answering. So thank you for asking me. Not yet, but I actually like. I kind of know where she is ish. Like,
Okay.
it's weird. We're like fairly certain we found her on Facebook, which makes me hate Facebook even more. I've always hated Facebook, and like I really,
Same.
really hate Facebook. But yeah, so we're like, I mean, I'm like 90% sure it's her, and
Okay.
it's really weird like seeing her page from afar, because it's like I she has a she has children, so it's most likely I have additional siblings. And yeah, it's weird because it's like she's there, and I've only ever let myself look at her profile twice. The first time I looked at it and I just like shut it, like I deleted Facebook after that, actually, because I just,
Yeah.
like, oh my god. And then
I understand, completely understand that. That's
yeah,
yeah.
the second time I actually had like a full breakdown, because I looked at her page, and her one of her children had tagged her in a video that was like this montage of her life. And it was just like, it was really hard. Like, it was hard because I'm like, holy shit. Oh, sorry. I'm like, holy
That's okay.
crap. This is like, this is her. This is like a big chunk of her story. Like, the video kind of went into like her story, and it gave some details that I was like, oh my gosh, if this is her, then that means that this and this and this and this and this happened.
Right.
I think the thing that was really hard too, like I like shared it with my husband. You know, I was like out on the couch, like out cold, like I couldn't even move. And the part that was hard is that there was pictures of her with her children smiling, like very happy, beautiful, beautiful, like beautiful family, and so happy. And there's definitely a small part of me that's like, do I want to be that person that just like shows up and is like, hey, like I'm here, like I don't want to disrupt. And that's the part that's hard, because I think you're again going back to this feeling of like you don't really belong anywhere. Like, I also don't want to like disrupt people's lives. So that's hard. That's really hard. But I definitely want to reach out, and like I'm gonna just see what happens. I'm very fortunate that my sister Sarah is living in Peru, and speaks Spanish, and her boyfriend speaks Spanish, and
Mhm.
they're gonna help me. Because I can't like bring myself to reach out to her. I just can't.
Yeah.
But I want to.
That's tough. That's
Yeah,
really, really hard.
I know it's really hard, but I really want to. Like it's this weird. I've never had this feeling of like you want it so bad, but you also are like I don't want anything to do with it. Like, um, it's really hard. It's I don't really have words for it, to be honest. Like I'm just it's just and the other thing too is like I don't know if anyone else does this, but um I told my sister Sarah and her boyfriend, like, I want you guys to reach out to her and handle the whole thing because, like, I can't even be a part of it. I can't even, like, I don't, you know, I've heard from my sister and I've heard from other adoptees when the birth mother doesn't want to, like, isn't ready to talk. So I'm, like, fully prepared for that. But I can also, I was telling my husband, I can feel this, like, shield going up in my heart. And it's like this
It's rejection,
it's like a
abandonment.
steel, yeah, it's like a steel case and it's like fully preparing me for the potential of anything. Like there's no known, I have no idea. I have no way of knowing what will happen. And I want to just do it. Like I want to just jump in and do it. Um, I
It's a
also like,
very good idea to prepare yourself, and that's a big thing with acceptance. You have to learn to accept what the outcome is prior to you doing it,
right,
because that is a huge, like, not that hypothetical, God forbid, it is a rejection that's devastating. I've been there,
right,
but I also didn't go in prepared,
right.
and
Yeah,
I didn't go through that acceptance. And
yeah.
not saying it's not going to hurt any like less, but it will like definitely prepare you
Totally,
more.
totally. Yes, that fear
Yeah.
of rejection. I saw somebody say that's 100% what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we've talked, Sarah and I have talked about this. Like, I'm someone who I fully prepare. Like, I make sure like I've played out every single situation in my head. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
I
so
do.
I need a little bit of Sarah's. Like, Sarah has so much just like let's go for it, let's do it about everything in life. So I'm trying to take a little bit of her.
We'll have both mindsets
Yeah,
going in will
exactly.
be helpful.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the other thing too, I'm just trying to separate like her from Peru because for so long I clumped them together, and I'm trying to just really give myself, like even if I don't reach out or whatever happens, like I can still go back to Peru. I can still, reconnect with Peru. I can still
mhm.
give that to myself for my identity and like my healing. And that part I'm really excited about. That part is something that makes me very happy. So
Aw. Well, like I said, I wish we can keep talking, but just so let's see a couple. Thank you for great discussion and sharing. Oh, you're welcome. Where are you guys from? So yeah, so Sarah is from Peru. Rachel is also Peru. I'm Romanian. Know that she said know that you are strong, and if that's what you need to help you heal, then do it. You're so brave. Love you. All S Cook. Sarah said, "Let's do it." Okay. It's hard not wanting this disrupting someone's life. Rejection held back. I wasn't prepared. Neither was I. Um, she's from Kentucky, but originally from Ukraine. Okay. Andrew, F yes. Okay. Um, but Sarah. Rachel, thank you so much. I saw Sarah on there. Like I said, I wish we can keep talking, but I thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing your story with everyone. You definitely are brave. And I wish you, I mean, I'm not going anywhere, but whatever you decide to do, I wish you just a lot of luck, a
Thank
lot of
you.
grace.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it. Love it.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining in tonight. Like I said, I just love people come on and just share. And for anyone who has additional questions or would like to be on Brave Souls and share your story, message me and we'll talk. Rachel, thank you again. And the video will be posted after. And everyone have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.